The Sith of the modern era, those who walk the path of darkness today, worship no gods. They revere no higher power, nor do they bow before a pantheon. For them, power itself is the only god. The dark side of the Force is not seen as something to worship, but as something to possess, to wield, to dominate, control. Power in their eyes is not a gift from the divine. It is a prize to be seized through cunning, strength, will. In many ways, the Sith's rejection of divinity reflects their ultimate desire for control. To them, the galaxy bends to the will of those strong enough to impose their vision upon it. But the Sith have not always been so solitary in their pursuit of power. Long before the likes of Sidious and Vader, the ancient Sith Lords revered gods, a pantheon of immortal entities that embodied their darkest desires and their darkest fears. But where did these Sith gods come from? And are they real? Well, welcome to the archives today, my friends, as we're going to answer that question and cover the gods of the ancient Sith. The immortal gods of the Sith were born from the dark imaginations of the Casai, the priestly caste of the original Sith species. These early Siths saw the galaxy as a chaotic battleground of divine forces at play, and they named their pantheon accordingly. Among these deities, the only named god is Typhogem, the left-handed god, a being of shadow and malevolence whose influence stretched across all of their myths. When the Dark Jedi Ajunta Pal led his exiled followers to the world of Korriban, following the war known as the 100-Year Darkness against the Jedi, Ajunta was hailed by the Casai priests as the manifestation of Typhogem. For them, these ancient Sith, Ajunta was not merely a conqueror, he was a living avatar of their god, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. But what were the gods of the Sith? Were they real, or were they simply inventions of a superstitious people grasping for meaning in an unforgiving galaxy? Historians and scholars have long debated that very question. Some suggest that the Sith gods were nothing more than a reflection of the Sith's own ambition and their fear, a pantheon created to mirror their desires for immortality, domination, and ultimate power. However, one figure among the Sith pantheon stands out, that being the Father of Shadows. In the book Supernatural Encounters, a pseudo-canonical text, the Father of Shadows is described not merely as a deity, but as the very progenitor of the dark side. In this account, if it's true, then the Father of Shadows is not merely a god of myth, but the embodiment of the darkness that permeates through the galaxy. It is said that the Father of Shadows created the foundations of the dark side, shaping it as a force of corruption and entropy. To the ancient Sith, he was the ultimate source of their power, their eternal struggle. If such deities truly existed, then perhaps the gods of the Sith were not entirely a product of imagination whatsoever. Even centuries later, echoes of these ancient beliefs remain. During the Galactic Civil War, Darth Vader swore by the immortal gods of the Sith in the heat of battle. Though Vader and his contemporaries no longer worshipped these deities, their memory clearly lingered, a faint shadow of the past that even Vader knew about. This is especially intriguing to the lore, as Darth Vader is one of the Sith Lords that cares the least for ancient knowledge, and the fact that Vader even referenced these gods is absolutely insane. In truth, the Sith gods represent more than mere myth. They embody the core philosophy of the Sith: power, control, fear, and ambition. These are the pillars from which the Sith built their legacy. Whether these gods were real or imagined, their influence shaped the ancient Sith's past, creating the foundation upon which the modern Sith now stand. The gods of the Sith are long forgotten though, buried beneath millennia of conquest and bloodshed. Yet their presence endures, not in the prayers of the Sith, but in their actions. For the Sith, divinity has been replaced by dominance, worship by will, and faith by fear. In the end, the only god the Sith serve is power. And so the Sith march, gods in their own eyes, wielding the dark side as both weapon and shield. But the question remains, are the ancients truly gone, or do they still whisper in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return? But let's go deeper into what the gods actually represented, and for that, we have to go back to the Casai priests, the purebloods of Korriban, the original interpreters of the dark side. The ancient Sith were no mere conquerors or warriors. The ancient Sith were believers. Long before the Dark Lords that we know, the Sith were a people bound not by blood, but by faith as well. At the heart of their society were the Casai priests, the priestly caste of the purebloods who served as spiritual leaders, interpreters of the dark side, and intermediaries between the mortal and the divine. The Casai were not students of the dark side, they were its most devoted servants. Their connection to the Force was untainted by ambition or greed that these Sith of today know. For them, the dark side was not a tool to be wielded for personal gain. It was a living, omnipresent force to be revered and nourished. To the Casai, the dark side was not theirs to control, but it was theirs to serve. Their rituals, their sacrifices, their lives were offered to its name and glory. Their connection to the dark side was so pure, so absolute, that some believed that they may have broken through the veil of the Force itself. Perhaps in their devotion, the Casai glimpsed the essence of the dark side in ways that no one else ever has or will. Perhaps they even touched the divine. The priests claimed to receive visions of their gods. They called them beings of shadow and chaos who ruled over the void beyond the physical realm. Were these visions real, or were they manifestations of the Casai's own beliefs and fears? The Sith pantheon was vast and terrifying as they describe it. These gods embodied the darkness that the Casai sought to understand, a darkness they believed shaped the galaxy. But unlike the Sith of the modern era, who see power as the only truth, the Casai did not seek to dominate the dark side. They sought to become one with it. For them, power was a means to an end. It was not the end itself. The ultimate goal of the first Sith was the greater gain of the dark side, to serve and strengthen the very force that they revered. The Casai's devotion to the dark side extended to every aspect of Sith society, as the Casai made the structure. They led rituals to bless armies before battle, guided rulers with prophecies, and maintained sacred temples where the dark side's power was at its strongest. The purebloods followed the priests not out of fear, but out of trust in their vision. The Casai taught that the dark side was not a tool for the Sith. It was their destiny, their purpose, their guide. But the Sith would not remain so pure in devotion. When the exiled Dark Jedi arrived on Korriban after the 100-year darkness, they brought with them new ideas and new ways to use the dark side. To the Dark Jedi, the Force, light and dark, was a weapon, a means to achieve their own power and ambition. This philosophy began to seep into the Sith culture, and over time, the selfless devotion of the Casai was replaced by the relentless pursuit of power, for power's sake. And with this shift, the ancient gods of the Sith began to fade to memory and legend. The rituals of the Casai were replaced by machinations of warlords and conquerors. The dark side was no longer a sacred force to be revered, it was a tool of domination, bending the will of those strong enough to command it. And yet, even as the gods fade into the background and to shadow, the question remains, are they real? Were they ever truly there? Perhaps the gods were never real. Perhaps they were creations of the early Sith, born from their desire to understand the darkness that they felt so deeply. But perhaps there is something more going on here. Not a god of the Sith, but perhaps of the dark side itself. Could the dark side, in its infinite hunger, be more than just a force? Could it be sentient or divine? Could it have a will of its own? A purpose beyond the mortal ambitions of those that use it? These are questions that we may never answer. But if the Casai were right, if their devotion truly allowed them to glimpse the divine, then perhaps the dark side is not just a power. Perhaps it is a presence. Perhaps the gods of the Sith are not myth, but reflections of something far older, darker, more eternal than we can imagine. The Casai priests are gone. Their gods are forgotten. Their temples abandoned. But their legacy is what remains in the whispers of the dark side, in the shadows that linger at the edge of every Sith's vision. Perhaps there are no Sith gods, but a god or gods of the dark side. That perhaps is a question that is best left unanswered. Thank you though, curious seeker, for delving into the shadows, taking in the knowledge of those who first worshipped the dark side. The ancient truths you've glimpsed are but the beginning. There is always more to uncover, both from the forgotten past and the veiled future. The dark side is infinite, its depths waiting for those bold enough to explore. Take this power, wield it, seize your destiny. The choice is yours. Our archives and videos are vast, to learn, to grow, to dominate. The dark side calls, but will you answer? And as always, thank you for visiting the video, and I'll see you in the next holocron.